Yo, yo. So we got this generation gap, this hip-hop generation gap, alleged generation gap. You know, this conversation has been going on for a minute, you know, from those of us that consider ourselves lyricists, whether you're MC or lyric heads, you know, as listeners. And we've been stomaching, you know, this current music, trying to get an understanding as to how we're supposed to listen to it. And some of us have figured that out, and others haven't. You know what I'm saying? And wow. Now come to find out it's just because we're old. Like that's it's not that the new sound needed to be you know, metabolized or processed, you know what I mean, or the older listener has to figure out how to listen to get that ear. Now come to find out it's just not for us, right? So therefore, because it's popular, if it's not for us, then I guess we can have nothing to say about something we built, which is odd.
So, that's interesting. Is it that you're not supposed to say nothing, or is it that all the comments are like super negative?
I imagine that there is. I don't know if it's just negative or if is that all that's being promoted. I think it's being tolerated. I think a lot of people accept the shift in music. You know what I'm saying? It isn't like the first shift hip hop has had, so it's being accepted. And then the handful of us that prefer, you know, lyrics over everything, like we supposed to be quiet because we think it's trash. Like it's not.
How dare you exercise your First Amendment rights?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that when I think back to like, I didn't really appreciate the Whisper song from those twin dudes. Remember that?
Who, the Yin Gang?
The twins. They were just whatever twins. I
think the Yin Gang twins.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay. Yeah, that's it. But when they done an interview and they said, like, no, this is strip club music, then it's like, oh, okay. So the problem then was like you playing strip club music on the radio, it was out of context. So same thing here, like, you know, once you find the context, okay, this is trap music, you know what I'm saying? Then it's okay. Well, if I'm not trapping out of a bando, then I may not be able to relate.
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying? If I'm not in a strip club, I may not understand, you know, the context of songs speaking on throwing bands or whatnot. You feel me? So once you put the context to it, I think that's where the older heads should fall back and just, you know, enjoy the music that's coming out, you know, that's for us, because it's not like that music is stopped. And that's one thing with the current distribution situation is that it's not required for a corporation to say, okay, this is going to sell X amount. If you as an older MC or if you as a lyricist want to put out content, like, there's avenues for that. You see what I'm saying? So now we just got to find those avenues, not just find avenues, but find those artists that speak to us. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's no need to chase a sound, because that's another misconception, is that, oh, rap is a young man's sport. That's false. You understand me? Rap is ultimately poetry spoken over beats.
Yeah. So
you won't ever hear of someone saying, "Oh, you too old to write poetry." Like, no, you got poets that write until they die. Like, you know, well into the 80s and 90s, you got poets that publish work. But somehow the poetry that we create is discounted to say, "Oh no, it's a young man's sport. Like, you don't want to be, you know, in your 40s." Still rapping. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's ridiculous. Yeah. It's poetry. You feel me? So that made sense as a marketing ploy to say, hey, this is the demographic that we're trying to sell to. But now that corporations have taken a back seat because there's direct creator or artist to consumer, we don't need marketing strategies that label us as irrelevant because we don't speak to 18 to 24 year olds. What we need is music that speaks to whoever. Like, so if I'm making music that speaks to 18-year-old, that's the music I'm making. If I'm doing it for the mid 20s, the mid 30s, the mid 40s, it's like I'm just gonna make quality music, and those that appreciate it for what it is can gain access. So there really should be no conversation concerning what people are doing with music that you don't necessarily like. So I definitely agree with. There's been some harsh criticism from lyric heads on newer MCs that don't seem to focus on lyrics but more vibe, hooks.
It's
vibe.
all hooks.
Yeah,
all hooks and beats. And part of that from the younger generation, I think, is it's about vibing, as they call it. Or what are you going to really remember the lyrics when you sipping syrup and smoking loud and popping pills? Like, you're not remembering no lyrics. You vibing to that beat, and you singing the hook that you can remember. That's it. So in the context, like you said, what type of music are you listening to, and what is it for? Like, that's kind of what the music is for. The other thing is, I think Pete Rock said something about that the new generation hasn't done what the old generation had did. Like, it's already, in the history books, it's in the Hall of Fame and all that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I would disagree, because what the younger generation has done is that they marketed it. They're making money, and all that is, off the shoulders of giants. Like, but with the new era, YouTube and SoundCloud and iTunes, and being able to just put your work out there, one thing they have done is they've learned how to make money for themselves off their art without having to go to a major record label or anything like that.
I mean, that's a
it don't change quality.
Yeah, I mean, but that's been happening as well. I mean, you had your Master P and others that definitely was independent in previous decades, like sincerely independent. And the problem then was that distribution was literally corporate controlled.
Yeah. So
they could only get so big, so they ended up signing distribution deals. But selling music out your trunk, hand-to-hand sales, that kind of goes to some of the earlier acts. So I don't even know if that's necessarily new. I think the technology definitely makes getting rich more feasible, without corporate hands. You see what I'm saying? So technology put it in put these younger cats in position to take economic wins. Indeed.
Yeah. I guess I just always felt that way when I always hear older people say, like, we did this for you, be grateful. And it's just like, okay.
No, I mean, you also hear young people speaking discourteously, like as though they invented something. They haven't invented anything. That's still under the genre of hip hop.
Yeah.
Now, I would definitely support an understanding that this can be another lane of hip hop. Like, this is trap music, or this is whatever they want to label. Obviously, mumble rap is not necessarily the most flattering, but whatever that name is, it was because it already happened. It happened with jazz, where they started trying to say you're not doing jazz. Mm-hmm. If you're not doing it in a traditional way. So you had a bunch of old heads that supported jazz in its infancy, and then as they watched it grow up to a certain age, they didn't want you tampering with it, because they were there from the beginning. So it evolved, and as it evolved, older heads went along with it, or they didn't, or they just continued to listen to what can be considered classical jazz.
Okay.
So then it continued to be pushed and radicalized and evolved to the point where it got to what they called experimental jazz. Experimental jazz was definitely deemed as non-music by all the previous decades, or those who loved the previous decades of jazz, because it sounded like drug inspired music. It just was a bunch of loud clashing sounds, you know what I'm saying? that in hindsight was inspired by a lot of cocaine, you feel me? So it wasn't completely incorrect that it had its roots in drug culture, you know what I'm saying? But it ultimately brought what they call Bitches Brew. You feel me?
Bitches Brew?
Bitches Brew was one of Miles Davis's albums, and it would just sound like a clash of sounds that, like I said, older heads at that time, older jazz heads didn't appreciate it. But now Bitches Brew is considered groundbreaking and yada yada, you know, decades after its release. So I think that this may happen with hip hop as well. If given a chance not to feud and be ridiculous and not to be discourteous to each other just because we prefer different things, and to say, okay, that music is for you, this music is for me, you know what I'm saying? And it's all under the umbrella of hip hop. That's doable, and we see it happening. You know, with De La dropping a recent album, Tribe Called Quest, Jay-Z. If they just keep making music the way that they make music, then there'll be a percentage of people that dig them. They don't have to chase a sound. Neither do young people have to chase an older sound. Like, we can coexist. There's a such thing as growing with your music. Like, I don't want to hear about doing drugs and trapping out of abandoned buildings because I'm not a trap star. You feel me? But when you catch other cats dealing with other content, then it's like, okay, word. You know what I'm saying? It's always been like that. I remember a mixtape I had that had some DJ Quick, Arrested Development, and KRS-One. Like, it was like just a straight mix. Like, it was just rap. Like, we didn't really categorize it. It was played on the radio in that way. It was just like, this is music. It wasn't categorized, and there was no, I mean, you liked what you liked. You know what I'm saying? Whether it was Houdini or LL or MC Light, it wasn't like, oh, you know, you can't like this because, you know, it's lyric based, or you can't like this because it's party music, or you can't like this because it's gangster rap. Like, nah, it was just fucking rap. It's what we was listening to.
So you're just saying coexistence is what we need to do?
Yeah, it's false. Like, no beefs need to exist unless it's making us money. Now, does this generate money for the existing commercial artists? I don't know. But to sit up here and say old people don't know what they're talking about, and then to turn around and say young people don't know what they're talking about, it's a waste of energy. You know what I'm saying? Like, the generational gap doesn't have to exist. Now, if it's just, I'm not rocking with your music, okay. You know what I'm saying? And there's no judgment in that. It's just, it's different. I don't have an ear for certain rap music. Doesn't mean that it shouldn't be created, you know what I'm saying, and distributed. It's just like, name it what it needs to be named. You know what I'm saying? Put
it in the category and keep
it moving. I don't go to trap music. I'm not a trapper. You see what I'm saying? I don't relate to trapping.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You may not come to conscious hip hop. Okay. But there's no need to say, who's better? That I don't see where the money is at in that. And it may be money. I just don't see it.
All right. Geeks and Goons.